Message from the House.
From the House of Representatives, message number 7, February 8, 2023. Mr. President, the House of Representatives has completed consideration of the budget bill, Senate File 1. In accordance with Joint Regulation 14-1-R, the bill has been directly referred to a conference committee of 5 members to meet with a like committee from the Senate to report recommended amendments for final considerations by both houses with respect to both budget bills, House Bill 1 and Senate File 1, and the amendments thereto. Message number 263, February 8, 2023. Mr. President, the House appointed House conferees to meet with the like committee number 1 from the Senate on amendments to Senate File 1. House conferees are Representative Nicholas, Chairman, Representative Larson, Representative Sherwood, Representative Stiff, and Representative Walters. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
House bills on first reading. House Bill 175, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 175, engrossed, excused absence state fair events, sponsored by Representative Strzok. Passed the House, ayes 45, noes 17.
House Bill 175 is referred to committee number 4, Education. House Bill 171, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 171, engrossed, state land leases, sponsored by Representative Byron. Passed the House, ayes 36, noes 26.
House Bill 171 is referred to committee number 5, Agriculture. House Bill 74, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 74, engrossed, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, sponsored by the Travel Committee. Passed the House, ayes 35, noes 26, excused 1.
House Bill 74 is referred to committee number 6, Travel. House Bill 44, first reading of the House file.
House Bill 44, Road and Bridge Construction Alternative Contracting, sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Passed the House, ayes 55, noes 6, excused 1.
House Bill 44 is referred to committee number 8, Transportation. House Bill 190, first reading of the House bill.
House Bill 190, engrossed, Wyoming Value Added Energy and Industrial Plan, sponsored by Representative Harshman. Passed the House, ayes 37, noes 25.
House Bill 190 is referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Reports from standing committees.
February 8, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 13, Office of Guardian Ad Litem Program References, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 7, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 93, engrossed, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Fringe, Hicks, Ide, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Kolb. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business consideration. Senator Steinmetz, start screaming at me. I'm not paying much attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that House Bill 93, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, be re-referred to appropriations. It does have an appropriation.
That objection, so ordered. Senator Case.
Mr. President, with your permission, sir, I'd like privilege of the floor to correct a meeting notice this morning.
Done.
One of the House sponsors of the sponsor of House Bill 73, annexation vote requirement, expressed that he wasn't ready to hear the bill, so we're substituting another House bill, House Bill 103, political party affiliation declaration and changes. The rest of the notice remains as previously stated. We'll start at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you, sir.
Seems similar, so granted. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that business. Order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. Tall, silver-headed fellow from Jackson, please approach.
Committee of the Whole will come to order. Just to finish up a piece of business from before lunch, House Bill 18 is passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration, House Bill 61. Will the clerk please read in the bill?
House Bill 61, engrossed. Source material associated with mining agreement, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act relating to environmental quality. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. Was re-referred to Committee Number 2, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Nethercott, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Kinski. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
And we have amendments. Senator Dockstader. Chairman, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with a favorable motion of House Bill 61. Present the bill. Senator Ellis.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will do a much better job presenting this bill than I did yesterday. We've already kind of had a preview of it. But this is a bill that was worked on in the interim, and it deals with source material associated with mining agreements. As you know, years ago, the state of Wyoming received something called primacy when it was dealing with uranium and thorium mining as the primary mineral that they were being extracted out of the ground. Either the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the authority to regulate this, or the state of Wyoming, if they have an agreement with the NRC, can enter into something called agreement state status, where the state actually regulates it. Our mineral producers really appreciate doing business with the state of Wyoming rather than the federal government. And so it's been a wild success. We received testimony that they're able to get their permits at half the time and half the cost. One issue that has arisen, though, is what happens when uranium and thorium are mined as a byproduct. An example of that would be, we're all familiar with rare earths, in instances where a miner is looking for rare earths and also encounters uranium and thorium as a byproduct. They would need additional authority for the state of Wyoming to regulate that. So what this bill would do would allow the state of Wyoming, with the governor and the Department of Environmental Quality, to negotiate and enter into a similar agreement status with the NRC so that Wyoming would continue to regulate this rather than the feds. In your mailboxes, you'll see a handout kind of dispelling some concerns that had been out there. This bill may seem light on some detail. It's because it's amending existing statutes. So, for example, there are questions about who has liability if something goes wrong. Ultimately, that's the operator. The other concerns are pretty well laid out, and the Department of Environmental Quality has a robust set of regulations on point that would also be developed for this certain activity. So to walk you through the bill, the first page, again, just really is conforming language. You'll see all the existing language about the state's ability to negotiate with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but then it adds this language about mining and including these, when the activity has those substances as a byproduct. Going on to page 5, you'll see, again, just more conforming language, licensure, transportation, all of that. This is a pretty straightforward bill. But then getting toward the end of the bill on page 9, you'll see in section 2, for the body to be aware, this program that we have in place at the DEQ is largely covered through fees that the licensees each pay. So section 2, paragraph A talks about the fee that would be imposed. Paragraph B talks about the environmental Quality Council being able to promulgate rules to make sure they're regulating these materials. And then Section 3, you'll see the addition of 2 full-time positions. And that goes on to page 10. And then finally, on page 10, Section 4, there is an appropriation of $1.84 million from the general fund to the Department of Environmental Quality to stand up this program. Finally, the act would take immediate effect. With that, there is a standing committee amendment, and I ask that it be read in.
Go ahead.
House Bill 61, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to an engrossed copy, page 10, line 2, delete.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 61. We received some testimony from the Department of Environmental Quality that for this program to be stood up, they wanted us to change the dates to better align with biennium planning. So you'll see the date substitutions made as requested in the Standing Committee Amendment. I'd urge your aye vote.
Questions for Senator Ellis on the Standing Committee Amendment? Sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment to House Bill 61, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we also have a Committee of the Whole amendment. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask that Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 be read in.
House Bill 61, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, corrected copy, page 9, line 22 after.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 61 and would ask you to vote aye. After we turned in the Standing Committee Amendment, LSO identified a few other clarifications that could be made. So this would just clarify when those positions would start. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Questions for Senator Ellis on this Committee of the Whole amendment? Sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 61, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Questions on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Docksitter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 61 do pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? House Bill 61 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 70.
House Bill 70, Definition of Home-Based Educational Program, sponsored by Representative Nyman, an act relating to education. It passed the House, ayes 60, noes 1, excused 1.
Chairman Scott.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 70. Mr. Chairman, I move when the Committee of the Whole rise and report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 70 do pass, and I yield to Senator Brennan for an explanation of this good House bill.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is House Bill number 70. This is relatively simple. If you look on page 2, line 2, we are simply repealing an instructional program provided to more than one family unit does not constitute a home-based educational program. What this does is it just opens up opportunities and allows for flexibility in homeschooling so that more than one family member can help with the education process. I'll stand for questions.
Questions? Seeing none. Good explanation. All right. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 70, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 70 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 52.
House Bill 52, Revisers Bill, sponsored by the Management Council, an act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments. Passed the House, ayes 60, excused 2.
You've heard the reading of the House bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Guru, over to you on the revisers bill.
Really? No, direct, okay.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, all right. Senator Kinski. A motion.
Mr. Chairman, we need to lay that back, if we could, please.
No, hey, Mr., can we do the bill? It's the reviser's bill.
Does anyone want to move it? You want to lay it back? All right, we're laying it back. It was a good time. Hope everybody enjoyed themselves. House Bill 52 has been laid back until later in Committee of the Whole. Next bill for your consideration is House Bill 9. Will the reading clerk please read the House bill?
House Bill 9, Juvenile Courts Concurrent Jurisdiction Clarification, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to juveniles. Passed the House, ayes 59, noes 2, excused 1.
and there is an amendment. Sorry, yes. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I would move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 9, Juvenile Courts Concurrent Jurisdiction Clarification. And for an explanation of this bill, I would ask that you call on the senator from Fremont County, and we will deal with the Committee of the Whole amendment after an explanation of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This was I believe it was a joint interim topic for the Judiciary Committee. It involves a situation where the jurisdiction is a bit murky for someone that is charged and with a crime. The crime was committed when they were a juvenile, but they are apprehended or charged when they are an adult. And this actually went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court suggested that it might be good to clarify this situation, and so what this does is do exactly that. There was a change from the beautiful white bill that was probably introduced by our good friends down the hall that made the bill green. That's going to be the subject of the amendment coming up, and we can talk about that. But as you can see, our good friends down the hall limited this concurrent jurisdiction to be until the person is 21. That is going to be the subject of an amendment that's forthcoming. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Senator Scott on House Bill 9?
I think this is going rather well.
I think so. Senator Landon.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I would
Committee of the Whole amendment.
I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 9. And Mr. Chairman, to explain what we're up to with this amendment,
Can we have that read in, please?
thank you.
House Bill 9, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 3, delete.
Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, now I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 9. I apologize for getting out in front. So fellow senators, we visited a little bit about this this morning, and we flirted around the edges, but our good Senate attorney staff has picked up on the fact that we probably jumped outside the bounds of the bill down at the other end of the hall. In other words, we left some stuff on the sidewalk. We've got to go back and sweep that up and clean it up. I can get into a little bit more detail, but the bottom line is we need to strip the amendment that was put on down the hall and bring it back to that good white form that was alluded to by the senator at the back of the room. As introduced, this bill clarified that the juvenile court has concurrent jurisdiction over proceedings involving persons age 18 and older, alleged to have committed the offenses as a minor. The senator explained that. The House amended the bill to have juvenile court concurrent jurisdiction over proceedings involving persons under the age of 21 who are alleged to have committed an offense as a minor. While it's certainly a policy question for us, Mr. Chairman, what this does is it may implicate the constitutional provision which goes outside the title of the bill. In addition to that, if it is the policy decision to limit it in the way that they did down the hall, it really requires some other additional considerations. I would suggest to you that we clean this back up, we back this out, we proceed with the bill, and we can address many of those other changes if we want to take this up during an interim, for example. I can get more detailed as to those statutes that this would affect, Mr. Chairman, but that's what we're doing. Be glad to try to answer any questions.
Questions for Senator Landon on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 9? Question, sensing you're ready to vote. Okay. The motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment, wait a minute, sorry. Are you ready for the question? There we go. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 9, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Question having been called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report it, do so with favorable recommendation on House Bill 9. All please say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 9 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Before we hear our next bill, I want to give a small explanation on the reviser's bill that we did not hear just a couple of minutes ago. We heard it in committee today, but it's been held back. And the reason is simple. We want to wait until we get through a little farther into this session and see if there are any more errors. All of those of you, I'm sorry, who are new, the reviser's bill is just technical corrections on the bills that have occurred so far. So we're just going to hold that for a while longer just to see if we need any more cleanup items before the end. So just an explanation there. Next up for your consideration is House Bill 20.
House Bill 20, engrossed, land exchanges notice. Sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, an act related to state lands. Passed the House, ayes 52, noes 9, excused 1.
And we have an amendment. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 20 do pass. It has, and there is an amendment. I would like to ask that it be read in at this time.
House Bill 20, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 11 after.
Senator French.
And for an explanation, I call on Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, this goes into our existing state land exchange statutes, and it really only does one thing. And I think we saw this a little earlier. It's always interesting when we pull some of these back and we see the framework. When you see this and it's just one giant run-on sentence, you know this statute's been in place for a long time because we don't draft them like that anymore, Mr. Chairman. And consequently, we do things a little bit different than we used to. What this just does is before the State Land Board actually executes or completes an exchange of state lands, that they were required to provide notice to the counties affected, to the leaseholders and those adjacent landowners that are affected. Mr. Chairman, that's what the bill does. Mr. Chairman, the Standing Committee Amendment just brings in and says rather than county, it says county or counties because you potentially have multiple counties affected associated with these land chains. So on the Standing Committee Amendment number 1, if there's no questions, I'd ask for the question.
Questions on the Standing Committee Amendment for House Bill 20? Hearing none, sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator French's motion of the Standing Committee Amendment Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 20, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
Questions? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I've got 2 questions. One of which is I'm trying to figure out, and my family ranch does have significant amount of state land leases. And I'm always nervous about conflict of interest on one of these. And the question is, I know we're not contemplating any exchange that we would initiate, but I understand they sometimes initiate one that without the lessee approving of it. Does this affect that kind of circumstance? And I'm really trying to figure out whether I've got a conflict of interest on the bill or not. The second question I've got, Mr. Chairman, is rather different. There has been a statute where the county commissioners can call for a public hearing on one of these. Was passed, frankly, when there were some abusive exchanges up in my county that were widely opposed. I was trying to put a stop to some of that. And I think it's still there, and that's why the county notice is here. But I'm trying to confirm, is that true or not? So, Mr. Chairman, I have both of those questions.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Any further questions before we go back? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, on the first question, this is the reason for the bill is exactly what you described in the first place, is somebody could actually nominate an exchange of land and you're the leasee and you wouldn't even know about it. So this now, at the appropriate time, if it's your lease, you're going to be notified that somebody has nominated this for an exchange. And so that's the purpose of the notification. So you will know. Not only that, Mr. Chairman, if you're the adjacent landowner, you'll be noticed too that this exchange potentially is going to occur. So as that leasee, right now, there's no requirement that the Office of State Lands has to notify you as the leasee or the adjacent private landowner. Furthermore, it would also notify you that if somebody's private property was going to be as part of the exchange and you're next to it, but that property was going to be exchanged for state lands, this would require that you also provided notice for under that scenario too. So one's the state leasee would be notified that his lands are potentially going to be exchanged. The adjacent landowner to that state leasee would be going to be exchanged. But if those state lands that were going to be exchanged are over here in another county, whatever those private lands that are also going to be exchanged for those state lands, you would also receive notice of that also. So this is all about transparency, that everybody knows what's going on, what parcels are going to be transferred. On the other questions, as far as the county commissioners, now this all provides notice for those county commissioners. It doesn't affect the current process of county commissioners to hold their own meetings whatsoever. I hope that answers questions.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Any further questions? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just a little bit further information. Appreciate the explanation, but this is an attempt also to give the board some information as to what the public response to the proposed exchange is. That's why the county commissioners are in this process. Frankly, we've had some challenges in parts of the state that I may or may not represent, where the county commissioners, on their own initiative, send a letter, describing their opinion to the Office of State Lands. And we asked on the Ag Committee for all the information regarding a particular land exchange, and that letter was not part of the file. So I think this is an attempt to ensure that communication does happen. So that the drawback now is you go through this whole process, it's a very involved process. You get to the very end, and all of a sudden, the board recognizes this extraordinarily unpopular exchange, and we keep on hearing about how little time State Lands has, how little personnel they have. So this is an attempt to give both State Lands and the board an idea of what that public reaction may be. So appreciate the good work that's been done by the new committee. Can certainly support the bill. That's additional context.
Further comments? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So under the current process, if you look at 36-1-111, there's paragraph A, and it lists in 4 Romanettes what the Office of State Lands is supposed to consider to make those state lands more manageable where the lands are not otherwise manageable, meet a specific need of a school or community for land, better meet the multiple use objectives for the benefit of the trust, or realize a clear long-term benefit for the trust which substantially exceeds the present and probable for future benefit of continued ownership. So that makes sense to me. That's the current process. When you add B, the language on page 2, line 7, it says, or is that page 3? Page 3, when deciding among more than one possible exchange of any state land that have been determined to meet these criteria. I just want to be clear that, and I don't know that it's quite worded this way, is it when you have an exchange where that involves the same parcel in the same county? I think the way it's worded, I read it as you have this one, but there might be one across the state or far away. And so maybe some language to tighten up that intent. And so I just want to make sure I understand. So this criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Romanettes on pages 3 and 4, those are the tiebreakers. Is that my understanding of if State Lands has 2 competing exchanges for similar lands?
Thanks, Senator. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, having heard the explanation, and I have disclosed to the Senate, I do have considerable state land interests as part of the family ranching operation, which I'm a part owner. I think that there isn't any specific case that I know of that's likely to affect us. This has not got to do with substantive rights. This is simply a notice provision that sounds like basic fairness to me, so I do not think I have a conflict. And Mr. Chairman, I would tell you, in all the years I've been at this, I've had one individual threaten to do this, to nominate a piece and put it up. And that occurred right upstairs in the balcony. And he was mad over a specific bill and trying to influence me, threatened me. And I told him where to get off. And that was effective. I never heard anything more about it. The threat was not carried out. But unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, the teenage children of the then President of the Senate were within earshot. And I got in trouble with the President of the Senate for the vigor of the language that was used. But it was effective. I didn't do what he wanted, and he didn't carry through the threat. So that's the sort of thing that can happen, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott, while we ponder that, Senator Hicks, you want to take a swipe at Senator Ellis's question? Or you want me to go on to Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, before we get there, I guess as I understood the question, was looking at existing statutory components that's not directly in the bill. So there's criteria that the Office of State Land has to look at, and that's the value for value, all of these other amenities. This doesn't deal with that. This just deals with the orders and the regulations relative to those changes. It's a different issue, Mr. Chairman. This just says if you go through that whole process, that 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you make a determination that you may want to proceed forward with an exchange, at that point in time, they're going to have to notice these folks. That's what the bill does. I don't know if that addresses the question, but if you could rephrase the question, maybe I could get a better answer.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if this bill could have helped us with our skilled nursing facility at Buffalo, that the land had actually been leased for a gravel operation where we were going to build our skilled nursing facility. Wonder if this would help the transparency on that kind of an issue.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand. So I'll try and rephrase. As I understand it, the state lands will receive a nomination or an application for an exchange. They go through a process where they go through the existing criteria found in paragraph A. They make that determination if they think, an exchange is in the state's interest, then it goes through the process, and then eventually, the State Board of Land Commissioners sees it, then public notice is provided. So I understand the piece that would say, we're going to do even more specific notice to legislators, county commissioners, leaseholders, et cetera, in the area. My question then, though, is at that point, then you have an adjacent landowner, leaseholder, whatever, that says, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know about this. I would like to be part of the exchange. Here's my application. Now you have two. And so then now State Lands has two applications, and they're trying to figure out which is the better deal. So my understanding was it was always, early bird gets the worm. If you were the one that identified this opportunity first, you're going through the process. This to me sounds like, whoa. Now we've got another proposal. Now we've got to consider two. And they both have to meet criteria 1 through 4 in paragraph A, but to tie break, we're going to look at paragraph B, the criteria there. That's my question there. And then my second concern is I appreciate there are some goofy land exchange happening in people's minds, but we have to be really thoughtful in moving the goalposts when people have gone through this process. So it is with the effective date. This act shall apply to all state land exchanges pending on the effective date of this act. So for those individuals who are involved in current land exchange processes with the state of Wyoming, all that stops, and then we've got new rules. We've changed the goalpost. And so I am concerned about doing it, having this act take immediate effect. So if the bringers of the bill could explain why this has to be done instead of July 1st, so that affected parties can at least get their house in order, have notice, make plans, et cetera, that would be great.
Further questions? A couple of them laying out there for you. Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer those questions. And some of the questions or part of the questions, I'll have to get back to the bringer. We can do that on Second Amendment. But as the scenario that was described is once you provide notice to those adjacent landowners, somebody else may decide they want to also do a land exchange. At that point in time, that would go before the land commissioners, and they would have to make a decision whether they wanted to stop that process, entertain that additional discussion, because here's what's going to happen. They're going to have to go out there and then reappraise all of those additional lands. So at that point in time, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that we want to get so specific in statutes that we tie the hands of the land commissioners. On the other thing, I think the senator brings a good point, because what happens in that scenario, under the current scenario, would be the same as that would happen under here. The opportunity now with this bill, Mr. President, is that adjacent landowner may actually know that they have an opportunity to go in there and request a land exchange for those state parcels. So I think that's a good thing, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know that this would effectuate any changes. This is a long process, and it depends on where they are in the process with the existing changes. I would defer to the chairman of the committee as to why the previous to work this bill in their interim, why it's effective immediately versus July 1. I don't know that it would make any difference, but I'm not aware of all that's going on associated with that. So I'm going to phone a friend on that question, Mr. Chairman.
Before we ring that one, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies. I was looking at the introduced version, not the engrossed. My apologies. No more concerns.
Concerns evaporated. No need for a phone a friend. Okay, so now we're back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Senator French's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 20, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 20 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for your consideration, House Bill 14.
House Bill 14, Civil Case Filing Fees Amendments, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to courts. Passed the House, ayes 35, noes 26, excused 1.
And there is an amendment. Chairman Landon. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 14, Civil Case Filing Fees Amendments. Mr. Chairman, there is a standing committee amendment. I'd ask that that be read in at this time.
House Bill 14, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 3, after.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the standing committee amendment, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Fellow senators, this is a little bill that was worked during the interim by your joint judiciary interim committee. It's really quite a simple bill. It makes all of our court filing fees consistent in our statutes. It goes into 53206, which is civil matters in our civil courts, and it increases that filing fee from 120 to 160. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to explain what we learned in our committee, and that is that in this particular statute, the $40 and $10 fees that you see at the bottom of the paragraph on page 2 are outside of that filing fee. On the probate court side of things, they are contained within the 160. So it creates a little bit of a difficulty for our clerks of court out there. They are the ones that brought this to the attention of the Judiciary Committee and asked for it to be rectified. So that's what this bill does. That increase, you will see that on your fiscal note, and that's why the bill was re-referred to our appropriations colleagues so that they were made aware of it. And that too, Mr. Chairman, is where the standing committee amendment comes in. The standing committee amendment was brought to our attention during the committee meeting by our folks over at the agency that takes care of our family services. And this particular filing fee will create an impact to that budget. That impact will be to the tune of $125,000 to $130,000. So what the committee decided in the standing committee amendment is that we would simply hold that agency harmless until July 1st of 2024. That allows that agency to come through the appropriations process through our next budget session and hopefully be able to explain that need for an increase in that line item to our appropriations members at that time. So that's what the standing committee amendment does. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, I would call for the question.
Questions on the amendment? Questions on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of Senator Landon's motion to adopt the standing committee amendment for House Bill 14, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions. If there are no questions, I would call for question on the bill. Hope you'll support it.
Questions for Senator Landon? Questions on the bill? Sensing you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 14, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 14 is passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for your consideration is House Bill 16.
House Bill 16 engrossed, State Land Leasing Improvements, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, an act relating to state lands. was referred to committee number 5, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 16 do pass. And for an explanation, I call on Senator Kolb.
Senator Cole.
Well, Senator Kolb was not prepared because Senator Kolb was prepared to read
And I'll find that.
House Bill 20. So I didn't have any notice and I don't know what to say, so I'll bring it back to the co-chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kolb. Senator Hicks, help us out here.
Mr. Chairman, for an explanation on House Bill 16, this deals with the state land lease improvements. If you go into the bill, all it does is increase the amount that has to be approved by the state land board or the office from $2,000 to $4,000. So this just typically deals with improvements to state land. If you go out there and construct a little fence or put a little corral up there, it just raises that if it's under $4,000 in value as part of your lease agreement, you can go ahead and do that. Right now, you can't even build a quarter of a mile of fence for $2,000 or, in fact, there's not much you can do with anything nowadays, Mr. Chairman, for $2,000. And so this actually frees up the Office of State Lands and Investment on these very minor projects that they don't have to deal with every single application for improvement. So that's what the bill does. Stand for any other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think that's what Senator Kolb would have said, but questions first let's see, we'll start with Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a simple question. It's raised 2,000 to 4,000, but it doesn't state years on it. So what would happen if I built a quarter-mile fence a year for 5 years in a row that actually is probably 20,000 or 30,000? How do I, is there any method in there? I actually had a neighbor call me on this one, wondering if that's the way it worked or if we need to specify kind of how you do it. I don't have an answer, but a question.
While we contemplate that, we'll go to Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, this bill, as a state lessee, will be a significant convenience for us because we do both build fences and corrals on state leases. So I would declare a conflict of interest on this bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator, let's see, anyone else seek recognition? Senator Hicks to answer.
Mr. Chairman, so by increasing this to $4,000, the scenario that the president laid out is every year, he's only going to be able to build the same amount, a quarter of a mile of fence that he was before the bill passed, because it now costs twice as much to build a quarter of a mile fence. So it doesn't change that. You could still do an improvement today, even without the bill. You just have to stay under $2,000. So he can only build 1/8 of a mile of fence today, Mr. Chairman, but he could do it every year for 10 years. Under the existing framework of the law, this just says he can maybe go do a quarter of a mile for 5 years instead of 8 years. I hope that answers the question.
I see a head shake. Any other questions? Questions? The question being called. All those in favor of Senator French's motion and the committee of the whole rises to report that we do so with a favorable recommendation that House Bill 16 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 16 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for your consideration, House Bill 26. 16.
House Bill 26, School Facilities Appropriations, sponsored by the School Facilities Committee, an act relating to appropriations for K-12 school facilities, was referred to Committee Number 4, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move when the committee of the whole rise and report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 26 6 do pass, and I yield to Senator Rothfuss for an explanation of the House bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 26 was a product of the interim Select Committee on School Facilities work. And this comes from the process related to putting forward a request for buildings, for school facilities. The process, as you know, Mr. Chairman, begins with the commission putting together recommendations, bringing those to the Select Committee. The Select Committee works through those recommendations and forwards on a budget proposal. Typically, that's going to the Appropriations Committee, and then that gets worked into an overall school facilities proposal that comes to the legislature. The issue that we wrestled with, which this bill addresses, is that under some circumstances, there are going to be some changes from what the commission recommends to what the school facilities forwards onward. And that little tweak is on lines 2 and 3, where the language originally in statute seems to suggest that there will always be identical recommendations between the Select Committee on School Facilities and what the commission recommends. So there's a little language restructure there to indicate that budgets submitted by the commission under subsection A of this section shall be attached to specific projects for the applicable budget period, and shall identify amounts for design phase projects and construction phase projects separately. So that's the new concept that, Mr. Chairman, we wanted to bring forward, was first of all, a separation of the amounts of the design phase from the construction phase as those come from the commission to the School Facilities Select Committee, and then ensuring what you see on lines 19 through 21, that under circumstances as desired, the Select Committee may bundle those two into a single recommended appropriation for both design and construction, or may recommend those separately depending on which is in the interest of facilitating the project more rapidly, getting things done, and potentially saving money. So we may or may not be able to do what's on line 19 through 21 right now. We had some discussion of that, and in the past, we've wanted to forward that recommendation. So this provides a little bit of cleanup to ensure that we would be able to recommend a single appropriation for both design and construction, and that the process flows as it's actually carried out, which is a recommendation from the commission to the Select Committee, and then that's forwarded on, Mr. Chairman. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Senator Rothfuss on House Bill 26? Questions? Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to thank the senator from Goshen County for reaching out on this. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to go back and review a bill. We've got a lot of bills flying around, and I didn't have a very good answer for her this morning, but I think the senator from Albany County presented the bill well. This does not tie us into what that School Facilities Commission recommends to us. And it does not take your Select Committee on School Facilities, which meets throughout the interim, it does not take that piece out of the puzzle either. I think that's a valuable group that can come forward to our Appropriations Committee. And so I think the bill's in good shape. It gives that flexibility that I think the state Senate wants. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're tired, but I know it's our job to talk about these bills, so bear with me. I just wanted to be clear. We had an issue in Laramie County with one of our elementary schools, and I recall the fight being between design money versus construction money. If this bill passes, was that instance one of the reasons this bill was worked on?
Senator Ellis. Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's an example of where we struggled a little bit. The timeline didn't go well because we bound ourselves to two separate appropriations when in that instance, it was a prototype school, as I recall, and it would have been handy to just lump sum the two together so you could move directly from design to construction without having to wait through a construction season. So we've seen that a few times.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Further questions? Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, appreciate the senator bringing this up because there might be times in the future, and there was during this particular time where we would have missed an entire construction season. So that comes into play as well. There may be times where we would want to come forward with design and construction, present that to the appropriations that comes out here for approval, but we may want to start right away after a session, for example. So, thank you.
Further questions? Further questions on House Bill 26? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 26, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 26 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 19.
House Bill 19, State Indian Child Welfare Act Task Force, sponsored by the Tribal Relations Committee, an act relating to children, was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, and Dockstader. No, Senators Bouchard and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. Was re-referred to Committee Number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Garou, Nethercott, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Kinski. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 19 do pass. For explanation of that bill, I turn to the good senator with a jar of dirt on her desk, Senator Ellis.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you, you have a companion bill to something we've already looked at once this session, and it involves the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. To briefly refresh your memory, there is a case pending in the U.S. Supreme Court which might overturn the Indian Child Welfare Act. And if it does so, we are taking steps to provide a little bit of a bridge and some certainty on what would happen, who has jurisdiction, tribal court or state court, when it comes to custody matters involving Indian children. So while that piece is important, as we've been looking at this issue, we became aware that a number of states, I believe 9 or 10, have already codified the federal ICWA laws. But not all states have tackled it the same way. We heard testimony in the Tribal Relations Committee that other states have formed task forces, have identified ways to improve cooperation between states and tribes, and have modified that. So on the heels of looking at, legislation that's now down at the end of the hall that might provide that bridge, this would allow us to really bring necessary stakeholders together to offer solutions that make sense for Wyoming. So I won't walk you through the bill in great detail, Mr. Chairman, but it would include, people that specialize and work in this area of the law, including prosecutors, members who are appointed by the governor at the recommendation of both of our tribes. That's an acknowledgement of our tribe's important sovereignty to recognize those members. We would have 2 House members, 2 Senate members, and going on to it, it includes pretty standard language about how we handle task forces as far as offering per diem, mileage, et cetera. However, for any federal or state employee that participates, that would be included in their normal job duties. So there is an appropriation of, I think, $40,000 out of the general fund that would do this. This is an important companion piece of legislation, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Questions for Senator Ellis on House Bill 19? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, just a little explanation as to where is this at on the docket with the Supreme Court as far as the case as? When do they expect to take that up? I think that's important in the context of, is the task force planning on meeting before the Supreme Court even rules? So if we know where it's at on the docket. The other thing is why wouldn't this just be a topic for the interim for the Select Committee on Tribal Relations? Mr. Chairman. Did my first.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really great questions. As far as the timing on the case, oral arguments have been heard. So I think people are anticipating a decision in June. It's important to note that the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act, even if nothing happens, already authorizes states and tribes to work together to fine tune the Indian Child Welfare Act. As always with federal regulation, it provides the floor, not the ceiling of protections. So these are conversations we can be having regardless, that we should have been having. And so I think the timing is right on that point. And then on the second question of why not a topic for the interim, Mr. Chairman, your Select Committee on Tribal Relations historically meets twice during the interim for 2-day hearings. This last year, we tried to save some money and we pared it down. We had 2 one-day hearings. the kind of work it would take to go over the federal act. I think if you recall, it was a 30-page bill. We simply wouldn't have the time. This would be our only topic that we'd be able to tackle. The other piece of that is, as we all know, when the public wants to testify and participate in our hearings, they do so at their own dime. And they usually volunteer their time to come and testify on things that are of interest to them. Here, we're asking experts to volunteer, not just volunteer their time, but come to spend some time with us to make sure we get it right. And so offering mileage is appropriate, a way to compensate them for their time. That way it's more of a study and not just a legislative hearing.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Back to you, Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, so having some experience with this in the past is, you know, one of the other ways that we typically deal with this is just for the, would be the select committee or the standing committee to come to management council and ask for extra days. In fact, we have in the past even appropriated money to bring in outside witnesses to facilitate those. So it, you know, I know a lot of us are reluctant to more task forces for study purposes, and I think this is probably a good reason, a good purpose that we need to look at. But, you know, if we use the select committee, you have broader representation from the legislature. These meetings could be held up there in the area that's close to those tribal representatives, and so we could have greater participation if we have specific meetings with the select committee specific for this purpose. And so is that an option that the select committee would be interested in, is asking more time and an expanded budget to do exactly what the task force does?
Other questions? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer that question. As the task force is presented, you'll have 2 members of the Wyoming House and 2 members of the Senate appointed. The select committee has 3 members from the House and 3 members from the Senate. So it would be adding more legislators. One of the important things that we've been criticized on, quite frankly, and received some pretty loud feedback on, is just the format of our hearings. We have legislative meetings in a certain way where we have, you know, 2 chairmen, people sitting at the dais. Sometimes we sit on elevated seats. Some of the feedback we've heard is that really sends kind of the wrong tone for what we're trying to achieve with this. We're not trying to have a hearing where it's one-sided, we ask questions. This is intended to be a work group, a task force, and they have incredibly different missions. I call your attention to the fact that we just watched the Wildlife Task Force, who I know the good senator is very familiar with, spent time working on those. They took a deep dive into some really complicated issues, and they were able to bring those to the TRW committee, and we've passed several pieces of legislation based on the work of that task force. That's how we see this task force proceeding, Mr. Chairman, is you have experts who aren't sitting in a legislative type meeting, but who are actually hashing out those details, much like we've done with many other task forces, and bringing recommendations back to legislative committees or select committees for further action. So I appreciate the desire to do that. I'll confess that when I look at the body, and I know my body of knowledge, there are a lot of things I know about. The Indian Child Welfare Act is a big one for me. I'm not an expert. I would never put myself out as an expert in this. But we do have people in Wyoming who have that expertise, and they should be brought in as equal voices on the task force.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Any further questions? Further question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 19, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. House Bill 19 has passed the House. Or, sorry, not passed the House, passed the committee of the whole. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, wild pony. Oh, bring her back. Bring her back. We got her back here. Easy. I just picked up the last file. It went crazy. I'm sorry. The next bill for your consideration, House bill for your consideration, is House Bill Lucky 13.
House Bill 13, Office of the Guardian Ad Litem, Program References, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to children. It was referred to Committee Number 1, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman.
And we do have an amendment. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, just trying to clear out the dust as we pulled her off into the bar pit for just a moment, but we're back up on the road. Mr. Chairman, I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 13, Office of Guardian Ad Litem Program References, There is a standing committee amendment. I would ask that that be read in at this time.
House Bill 13, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 11, after.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that amendment and ask that for a explanation of this good interim bill, you call on the senator from the Southwest.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as the good chairman mentioned over here to my right, this bill was one that was sponsored by the Joint Judiciary. They did a lot of good work, and I think this one was a good cleanup bill, and that's really all it is. If you take a look in the first paragraph, really all this bill does is it just amends references from the Guardian Ad Litem program to the Office of Guardian Ad Litem. A few years back, we made that change. And just to give you a little background on what the Wyoming Office of Guardian Ad Litem does, it's a state and county funded agency that provides attorney GALs for children in juvenile court, GALs, obviously, Guardian Ad Litem. These appointments are mandatory in abuse and neglect cases, and they're discretionary in CHINS cases and delinquency court cases. They also represent children in termination of parental rights. We have about 5 people in the office, 1 director, so 6 full-time people that do this. They had about 1,400 cases around the state last year. That just was, I think, was just abuse and neglect. The GALs are automatically appointed by a judge, and generally these are contract attorneys who work, generally, they may do part-time work, but they also do this full-time sometimes. Kind of depends on the attorney. So really, all this bill does is we just change, if you look throughout the bill, we just change Office of Guardian Ad Litem to it used to be called the Guardian Ad Litem Program, and we're changing it to the Office of Guardian Ad Litem. So if you look throughout the bill, you'll see that's really all we've done throughout this, is just change from program to office, not a big change. However, the amendment does, it doesn't require much else either. So if we could, we'd just go ahead and take a look at the amendment now. I know it's been moved already, but the amendment just inserts 1412-101 on page 7. And again, it just gives all administration from the GAL program to the Office of the Guardian Ad Litem, and that's all it does. Happy to answer questions on the amendment first, if anybody has any.
Sorry, questions on the amendment? Question being called. Yes, okay, all those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 13, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're back on the bill. Question on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable consideration of House Bill 13, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? House Bill 13 is passed Committee of the Whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
Hey. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. President. There you go, boss.
Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 181 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 18, do pass amended. House Bill 61 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 70, do pass. House Bill 9 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 20, do pass amended. House Bill 14, do pass amended. House Bill 16 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 26, do pass. House Bill 19, do pass. House Bill 13, do pass amended. Senator Guru, Chairman.
Senator Guru.
Yeah. Mr. President, I move for adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Report is adopted. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, message number 264. February 8, 2023. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading in an amended form by the votes indicated. House Bill Number 4, Medicaid 12-month postpartum coverage, ayes 34, noes 28. Message number 265, February 8, 2023. House Bill Number 38, Wyoming National Guard member referral, ayes 41, noes 21. Message number 266, February 8, House Bill Number 59, Wyoming National Guard tuition benefits, ayes 38, noes 24. Message number 268, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 174, Homestead Exemption Amendments, ayes 49, noes 13. Message number 269, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 188, Wolf Depredation Compensation, ayes 58, noes 4. Message number 270, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 199, License Plate Decal Breast Cancer Awareness, ayes 47, noes 15. Message number 273, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 222, Colorado River Advisory Committee, ayes 53, noes 9. From the House of Representatives, message number 267, February 8, 2023. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. House Bill Number 101, Uniform Trust Code Amendments, ayes 62. Message number 271, House Bill Number 200, Non-Resident Hunting Licenses Application Fees, on February 8, 2023. Message number 272, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 209, Wyoming Hathaway Scholarship Accounts Transfer Timing, ayes 61, noes 1. Message number 274, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 279, Voter Identification Requirements, ayes 55, noes 7. Message number 275, February 8, 2023, House Bill Number 284, Collection Agency Regulation Debt Buyers, ayes 39, noes 23. Message number 276, February 8, 2023, House Joint Resolution 3, Wild Horses and Burros Best Management Practices, ayes 57, noes 5. From the House of Representatives, message number 278, February 8, 2023. Mr. President, House Bill Number 95, Working Animal Protection Act, failed to pass the House third reading, ayes 30, noes 32. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thanks, Randy. Well, we're not 3 o'clock yet. I've got a journal from 1943. I thought I'd read to you until 5 o'clock so we can work a full day. How's that sound? All in favor, say aye. No. Those opposed, no. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Announcements. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, will meet at 3 o'clock this afternoon in Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider House Bill 57, Armed Forces Amendments, and House Bill 160, Driver's License Veterans Designation, replacing DD Form 214.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Your Committee 1 Judiciary will meet at 8 o'clock on Friday to take up House Bill 145, Disclosure of Sensitive Information Law Enforcement, House Bill 96 engrossed, Transfer on Death Deed Insurance Coverage, and House Bill 90 engrossed, Sex Offender Registration Requirements. Again, that's at 8 o'clock on Friday.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Early start, early announcement. Your Senate Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee will meet Friday morning at 7 a.m. to hear the following bills. House Bill 81 engrossed, Hospital Supplemental Payments Statutory Fix. House Bill 119 engrossed, Medical Prescriptions, Off-Label Purposes, continued from this morning. House Bill 65 engrossed, 988 Suicide Prevention, also continued from today. And House Bill 127, Healthcare Facilities and Clergy.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, will meet tomorrow at 8 o'clock a.m. and W2 and online. We'll hear HB 15, County Authority to Dissolve Museum Boards clarification. HB 126, Trespass, removal of trespasser. HB 147, unlawful trespass signage, taking of wildlife.
Mayor Kinsky.
Your committee number 2 appropriations will meet at 8 AM tomorrow in E301 for a re-referral, HB 93, omnibus water, and any other re-referrals as received.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been asked to read this again. Your committee number 5, Agricultural, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet tomorrow, 15 minutes after adjournment in room 2 to consider House Bill 21, State Lands, Use of Land Qualification Requirements, and House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiencies Cure Process. Thank you.
The committee number 12, Rules, will meet at noon tomorrow in W113 to jointly with the House to take up joint rules. Manuals, thank you. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.